A few nights ago, I and a friend of mine decided to do a Ouija. We had both been joking about it for a while because we're both loose skeptics, but the idea of it interested us. So, we got our candles, our board, our glass, switched off the light, and did the necessary mumbo-jumbo, then placed both hands on the small piece of glass and began to focus and speak out loud. We asked anyone to make themselves known. The only response was a flicker of the candle, slightly too large to be natural. We asked their name, but the glass didn't move. We asked how old they were. Nothing happened for a few seconds after that, and then suddenly a loud thump echoed through the room, sounding like it had come from under the floor, directly below the board. About 15 or 20 thumps followed, but I hadn't counted because I hadn't thought it was answering our question until halfway through. Me and my friend shared an uneasy look before returning our hand to the glass. In shock, we'd both fallen backwards away from the board and the source of the knocking. Shakingly, we began to ask more questions. Could it move the glass? Could they show themselves? Could they speak? Could they remember how they died? The final question was met with a thump from across the room, causing a large mirror to swing on the wall, as if the entity was indicating us to look at it. We did, of course, and saw ourselves sitting on the floor, the candle flickering in the low light. Both of our faces lit up by it. We stared hard for a few seconds before I heard my friend gasp and turn their head swiftly to look behind us. I followed her gaze and saw nothing. I cast her a confused look, but she was casting her eyes around frantically searching. "What's going on?" I asked her. She didn't answer for a few seconds, but then stared back into the mirror and grabbed my hand. She pointed at the mirror and asked if I could see it. I leaned forward toward the mirror and searched hard. It was so dark in the room that it was almost impossible to notice, but there it was, set between my friend and I, against the door, on the opposite side of the room to the mirror. There was no shadow cast by whatever it was, but it was there, as clear as day. I briefly wondered how I had missed it before, turning to look at the door, to see nothing. I tried to see if it was a trick of the light on the mirror, by moving slightly in my seated position, but it wasn't. Me and my friend looked at each other briefly, significantly more nervous now. I asked the entity if it could make a noise. We stared at it in the mirror as we spoke, and it seemed to nod in response. A second later, a low rumble echoed through the room, and we instinctively looked around to see where it had came from. When we looked back into the mirror, though, it was gone. We both took a deep breath and looked at the glass in the center of the board. My friend decided that she had had enough at this point and asked the entity to leave because she was scared. The same noise echoed around the room, and a louder thump sent the mirror from the wall and caused it to crack on the hardwood floor. My friend screamed as it did, and I stood up to look at the mirror to make sure it wasn't broken. When I looked into the mirror, I nearly screamed and backpedaled away from it, falling over my friend. There was a face in the mirror, so close that I could see the mist where its breath had marked the cold surface. A face only half visible, as if it was made of light, and it looked so angry. When I fell over, though, nothing followed but a childlike laugh that echoed for a few seconds before vanishing. The candle went out, and the temperature, that I hadn't realized had dropped, suddenly rose to normal. We knew straight away that it had been messing with us, and we both let out shaky laughs. We were no worse off for the encounter. We moved on quickly. The laugh at the end had completely disarmed any fear we had left. The problem is, ever since it happened, I feel like I see this entity all over the place, over my shoulder when I look at my phone, in the reflection of my car window as I walk past. I've started covering my mirrors, phones, unused screens, glossy books, windows, anything that can cast a reflection. I feel like I'm being stalked, and even though I can tell there is no malicious intent, it freaks me out that something seems to have attached itself to me. I think it's common knowledge by now that Ouija boards are not to be fucked with. It's definitely a split debate between people who believe their jokes and those who are too afraid to even allow one into their homes. Still, I think there's a part of everyone, whether they believe or not, that fears Ouija. This story is a little different, but it has the same primary focus. I don't have a ton of friends. While most kids were playing outside and watching Disney films, I would read Stephen King books and watch horror movies that were clearly not meant for children. I'm not going to play the whole I'm better than everyone else because I'm weird, nor will I say that everyone hated me because of this fact. I preferred being away from others. I blended into the wallpaper as I grew up. I started opening up a little in college. I made 5 really good friends, ones that were all into stupid horror things I was into. We started having movie Fridays. We wouldn't always watch movies though. Sometimes we'd read stories or play video games together on the large screen monitor in the middle of the living room. I stumbled upon this website while looking for new games to play on Fridays. It was basically a virtual Ouija, but not quite the same. Instead of having individual letters and a planchette that all users would have to touch, it had 2 simple text bars and a go button. One said petition, and the other said question. Research pulled up very little about the site, other than the fact that it was scary accurate. I decided that I would bring it up at the next get-together on Friday. Everyone sat in their accustomed places. Anita stretched out on the floor, mostly dicking around on her phone. Nick in burgundy armchair on the other side of the room. Beth, Tyler, and Elise on the couch. Myself in the recliner. We chatted quietly for about a half an hour before I finally stood up to reveal what I had planned for the evening. I had told them earlier in the week that I had something special, but most of them looked uncomfortable by the time they got the gist of what the site actually was. Basically, you type a petition into the top bar, something like, "Can you please answer this question?" and then you type your question into the bottom bar. It's much like a Ouija board, except this leaves room for lengthier answers. There was silence. I already had the site pulled up on the monitor. Finally, Anita spoke up. "Man, you know we've discussed this before. None of us want to fuck with spirits like that." This caused a debate that would go on for a while. There was a static charge in the room by the time we all, some hesitantly, agreed to at least try it. If it got too intense, we could always quit and do something else. I grabbed my wireless keyboard and typed the petition. I looked up at everyone. Okay, what should we ask? Everyone was silent, nobody really wanting to speak up. Fine, I'd do it myself. I typed, "Is anyone there?" A loading bar showed up below, the 2 text bars, then yellow text. "Hello, I'm here." Someone scoffed, but I didn't see who. I typed the petition again. "How many people are here?" Loading. "There are 6, and myself." I looked around, unease rested on the faces of everyone in the room, but there was also a little excitement there. Suddenly, everyone wanted to chime in with a question. Mostly, what color is my hair, or what brand of phone do I have? All of which it answered correctly. Everyone soon wanted to type the questions themselves, mostly to make sure I wasn't rigging it somehow. It was all good and fine until the keyboard reached Tyler, who had been the most reluctant. Still, he was just as excited as anyone else. He typed his petition and his question. Loading. I don't want to talk to him. A silence fell over the room as everyone looked at each other with confusion, except Tyler. He just stared at the screen, without looking away. He handed the keyboard to me, petition, then question. Who do you not want to talk to? Loading. Tyler. That one with the red hair. I looked over at him. He trembled a bit as he started to chew his nails. Beth grabbed his wrist gently and he lowered his hand from his mouth. Petition. Question. Why don't you want to talk to Tyler? Loading. His soul is already claimed. Petition. Question. Who has claimed Tyler's soul? I didn't press enter. Evaluating the faces of everyone around the room, they were all either staring at the screen in complete wonder and fright, or looking down at their laps. I hit enter. Loading. Those that hide in the shadows, they've been looking for him for a long time. With this, Tyler stood up and walked out the door, Beth chasing after him, only stopping to shoot me a worried, helpless look. Everyone else trickled out, and I decided to turn off my computer and go to bed. Before I could close the window, the loading bar showed up despite the fact that nothing was typed. They'll get you if they can. The next week, no one really wanted to get together. I hadn't talked to Beth or Tyler. Both of them stopped showing up to class. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Friday meetups were a thing of the past. None of us talked anymore. If we saw each other on campus, we'd wave, but that was it. About 3 months after, I got a phone call from Tyler at about 4 a.m. He was crying. Whatever that thing was, it was right. They're following me. They get closer by the day. I'm so fucking scared, he whimpered before the line went dead. I rushed out of bed into some shorts and out the door within minutes. It only took 5 for me to get to his apartment on campus, but the police were already there. Man in his 20s jumped from his window. Later I would learn that it was Tyler. Whatever Tyler saw touched everyone else in the group in one way or another. Within a 6-month period, misfortune grazed everyone. Anita had a horrible miscarriage. Elise had her house burned down, thankfully with no casualties. Nick was mugged, and they beat him up pretty bad. Beth, who was closest to Tyler, got it the worst. Her brakes failed in her car, causing a crash that would paralyze her from the waist down. Yes, misfortune touched everyone, except of myself. A year later, I found myself staring at that website again. I don't know if I was curious or just angry. I watched my friends deal with horrible things. I was the one that introduced them to this site. It was my fault, and yet I hadn't experienced anything horrible. I typed the petition once again. Can you please answer this question? Then, the question. Why has nothing horrible happened to me like my friends? Enter. Loading. They have no use for you. You have no soul. About 5, almost 6 years ago, my best friend and I thought it would be cool to mess with the Ouija board she had. We quickly became obsessive, and messing with this thing became an every other day event. In the beginning, nothing too crazy had happened, but slowly that started to change the more we used it. The first time we had something happen while using the board, we were at my friend Corey's house. It was 2008. And Obama was in the process of running for president. I remember this so clearly because the board had told us that he would win that year's election. As we laughed and asked our questions, the door to Corey's basement opened a crack and then closed just as quickly as it had opened. We asked the female spirit we were talking to if she had done that, to which she replied, yes. We asked her to please not do anything like that again, and her reaction was to turn off the dish satellite, causing the television to produce a loud static noise, and flickered the lights. After that, we ended the session. Little did we know that incident was just the first of many to come. Another time, we were using the board in my old bedroom at my parents' house. We came in contact with something and started telling it knock-knock jokes. It was fun for a while, but then things got creepy. The spirit desperately wanted to tell us a joke back, so we let it. It slowly spelled out knock knock, to which we responded, who's there? All it said was, I'm here, and something started non-stop knocking on my bedroom door. It started off slow, but got faster and faster within that short time. We were freaked and ended the session. The very last time we used the board was the worst, and I still, to this very day, feel something had followed me after this final experience. It was about 11:30 p.m. on a Saturday night, in the middle of August. My friend and I were in the truck area of her Explorer. Things started off calm, but got more intense as the session went on. We started out talking to what we thought was a spirit named Thomas, but that quickly changed. It started to get cold to the point where we could see our breath. Suddenly, Thomas was no more, and we had a dark entity on our hands. I feel this because the name it gave was not human. I wish I could remember what it was exactly. Anyway, instead of ending things right there, we kept on going. We asked it things like, "Where's Thomas?" and "Where did you come from?" all of which he ignored. Instead, he would taunt us, tell us things like we were going to die or be pulverized. We got called stupid bitches and ugly cunts. We were also told to fuck off numerous times. Then it got really weird. It started reading our minds. Literally. I would think of a question in my head, and before I could even ask it, the board already had an answer, waiting for me. This freaked me out, and I felt we should end the session. Every time we tried, it wouldn't let us. We started freaking out and felt it would be best to rip the board up and throw the planchette into a building that was about to be torn down. The second we ripped that board, a green glowing mist came from it. By now, we were terrified. We ripped the board into 7 pieces, drove around town, and threw them all over. The following months, my lug nuts came loose every other day. My boyfriend at the time broke up with me, and I got incredibly sick to the point where doctors couldn't figure out what type of virus I had. A year or so after that happened, I was at work with my friend. This guy we knew came up and started talking about the Pennsylvania house, the building we threw the planchette into, and how they were finally tearing it down. He then said, "And you'll never guess what I found in there. A whole Ouija board, planchette sitting on top and all." I wish I could have seen the look on my face when he said that. It had to be a look of pure terror. After all that, I've never messed with another one, and I refuse to do so again.